Welcome into the Go Bowling 400 edition of the Wedge Adjustment NASCAR DFS show. I'm your host, Josh Neal. You can follow me on Twitter at RotoRacer. I'm joined alongside, as always, by PJ Frappier. You can follow him on Twitter at PJFrapDFS. This week, NASCAR brings us to Kansas, which is an intermediate track. We've had a couple of those already this year, and for me, that's the most consistent DFS wise that I've had all year. I'm sure it's the same for you guys as well. But this race is broken down into three segments consisting of 267 laps. The first segment is 80 laps, the second is 80 laps, and the third is 107 laps. This week, a couple hours ago, qualifying happened, and qualifying was a mess. I think it was 11 drivers did not make it out for a qualifying run, and it has us DFS players going crazy. But if you're a GPP guy, this is where the money is to be made. If you're a cash guy like I am most of the time, you're not even entering a cash lineup. So with that being said, last week we went away from our ordinary salary range breakdowns, but this week we are breaking it down like that again. So, just to go over our salary ranges, the 4,500 through 6,000 range this week is very weak. Most of those guys actually qualified in the 20s, except for one guy, Landon Castle. That's the guy that me and PJ agree, or you could go David Reagan. That's the two if you need to use them, which we probably won't use too much in our lineups, but those two are the guys that you would look at. After that, the range is 6,200 to 7,400. The next range is 7,500 to 8,800. And the last range is 9,100 to 10,700. So with that being said, we're going to kick things off with the 6,200 to 7,400 range. And I will let PJ go first.
Yeah. So I'm going to start with Ty Dillon. He's starting in 22nd. So this track, if you don't know, Kansas is very similar to Texas after repave. Like when we were going to Texas, we were looking back on the Kansas race to kind of let us know, what to expect on a newly paved racetrack. That being said, Ty was one of those guys. He started 14th, finished 17th. Yeah, it's not a home run of a day, but at the same time, you don't really need the home run at that price. I think he'll be a little bit underowned compared to everybody else. He's kind of in no man's land starting 22nd, but
yeah,
I do like that a lot because, as you mentioned, this week it is good as a GPP player because so much ownership is going to be so focused on those drivers that miss qualifying. So finding guys that at lower ownership, as you guys know, is always my goal. And this is a great week for it. You can't be afraid to take shots, and Ty's definitely going to be one that I'm going to take a shot on. They've been actually pretty solid this year, getting stage points in a few races this year. So I like Ty's under the radar, and he could be in for a good run.
All right. And I got two guys here. I'm going to go back with them. Starting out with Danica Patrick at 6,900. She starts 24th. And if you guys watch the show regularly, which I'm assuming you guys do, I can't stand a player. But this week, the Stuart Haas machines look very good. She had some good practice times. She seems to be really happy with her car, and she tends to do well at these tracks. I wouldn't say great. I wouldn't say good, but she does well. And for me, I think this is going to be one of her better races. I think she can definitely finish around 15th. And at her price, at 6,900, I wouldn't say she's probably going to be underowned. I think she'll be properly owned around 20-some%. I think she makes for a great play. You might want to go back to this if I said she's great because I probably won't say it again. But I think I like her. She has a great car this week, and there's really not much more to say. I mean, you look in that range and this price range, there's really not many you can choose from because of this qualifying stuff. So is 24th. I think she can make her way to the 15th. She's got the equipment. Her boyfriend won last week, so that household, camper, whatever they're rolling with momentum. So hopefully the good vibes come from Stenhouse, and she'll make her way 15th. It might even surprise us and get a top 12, top 10 finish. My next driver is AJ Allmendinger at 6,200. When I first saw the salaries this week, I was very shocked because at 6,200, Chris Buescher, his teammate, is 6,500. If you guys recall last year, AJ Allmendinger, I think, finished 8th in both of the Kansas races. So he's had back-to-back top 10s at this track. His equipment, they've picked it up here lately. Their equipment has gotten better. They was off to a slow start for most of the season, but I think they're starting to hit their edge. They've had some bad luck 2 weeks in a row. I mean, you seen what happened last week. He took out half the field with that crazy, the big one. So if he can get past some bad luck, which I know every guy I seem to pick anymore is having bad luck, but 6,200 for a guy that came in the top 10 here last year, I mean, it's just too cheap for him. I think, if anything, him and Chris Buescher should switch salary. So that's a no-brainer for me. I don't know how he's going to be able to fit my lineups just yet. I've made a couple, and I've put him in one of the two. He fits very comfortably in one, but the other one, I tend to lean towards Danica Patrick on that. I think Danica Patrick has the better car. If you're deciding between these two, I would definitely take Danica Patrick this week. I'm a little bit more confident in that pick. So with that being said, we're going to move on to the next price range, the 7,500 to 8,800, and I'll let PJ start.
Yeah, and just before we officially move on, so Ricky Stenhouse is at the cutoff of 7,400. Please do not play him this week.
Which people will do because he won last week.
People will do that. I know they may have momentum starting fourth. Again, don't be so results-oriented, especially from last week at a super speedway where anything can happen.
Yeah.
Yes, they've been running good, but he is also very, very used to wrecking. He is still wrecking. He's still almost wrecked in practice by himself. So just do not play Ricky Stenhouse, please. I will not guarantee you that he's not going to lead a bunch of laps and win the race, but I mean, I
believe we all would be shocked if he did.
So with that being said, don't play him. On we go. We're going to go to Erik Jones, which is one of those guys who did not make qualifying today. 7,700, starting 32nd. It's not really a whole heck of a lot to say. They do have a good car. He is, again, young, aggressive. He wrecked in practice as well. They didn't tear it up any, their primary car that bad. He actually got lucky of the angle that it went in, and it didn't tear up the splitter. So he's at least felt what it's like to be on the edge here and a little bit over the edge. So that's actually encouraging. I think the track is actually going to come into these guys and it's going to tighten up as night goes on. So it's not going to be as loose, which is like, these practice sessions and then, the qualifying that's done in a day, but then you're going to race at night. So the guy's going to have to make adjustments. I actually think for a young guy, he's really, really good at making adjustments to his car and starting that far back. Like we talked about last week, with risk and starting far back, there's no risk. There's only upside. He will be highly owned, but it's kind of one of those guys, especially at the price, it's so hard to get away from. So
yeah, he's beyond his years, as we talk about week after week on the show. But moving on for my guy in this range, one of my guys in this range, I'm gonna save Ron Blaney for my next pick. I'm sure you guys are ready to hear me talk about him. But I'm going to go Casey Kane. He is $100 more. And I think if you're a smart player, you're probably going to pick Erik Jones. The general public's probably going to pick Casey Kane because Erik Jones has wrecked past couple weeks. He's not had the good luck with a lot of these drivers haven't. But the recency bias and all that, I think his ownership's not going to be Erik Jones. His ownership's not going to be where it should, which I think that's a great play. But back to Casey Kane. Casey Kane, 7,800. I think more people are going to be on him just because of his finish last week, which was a good finish. But, I mean, like you said, restrictor plate, anything can happen. His car is really good in practice. And he is – I was looking at driver ratings. Of the active drivers, he has a top 15 average from last year at Kansas. So he's ran very well since 2015 here. And for me, he's not really shown us much to be a believer. I think the best intermediate track finish he's had is around 20th. He's ran up there near the top 10 points during races, but he seems to always fall back. He seems to always be battling for his lap back on these kind of tracks. So Casey Kane, he's showing good practice speeds. Don't get me wrong. But out of this range, I think where he didn't qualify, you have to take a flyer on him and just trust the process here. I mean, he's not going to be higher owned than these other guys, I think, like Junior. You got your Johnsons in that 30 through 40 range. I think for me, it's got to be – you got to just stick these guys in your lineup and not overthink it. Like I'm overthinking it right now. I'm trying to talk myself out of it as we speak. But 7,800, the guy starting – let's see, where's he starting? He starts 31st. What more do you need? I mean, if he came in 20th, obviously that's not going to be exactly what you want from him. I think if he finishes inside the top 15, he's going to pay off. I wouldn't go too high on him just because he hasn't finished, I think, above 20th at these tracks all year. So for me, you take a flyer on him. Don't get too much exposure to him, but you obviously got to have a lot, but don't get over 30, 40%. I think Erik Jones is the better play. Erik Jones, like Martin Truex, his teammate, he's really fast this week. Erik Jones is probably the play out of these two. So we'll go to PJ next for his other.
Yeah, we're going to go to the weekly installment of my Ryan Newman love. 7,600, starting 19th this week. Last year at Kansas had finishes of 8th and 12th. So with that being said, those are good results in themselves. Plus, you couple that with who he is around price-wise this week, which is Ryan Blaney, Casey Kane, Erik Jones, Austin Dillon. Nobody in their right mind is – well, I take that back. Maybe just nobody in general, because I feel like I'm in my right mind, and I am damn sure going to click on him. Quite a bit. Like, he might be my highest owned in my GPP build. And I know that's crazy, but again, it's one of those weeks where the ownership is so concentrated, and he is going to be criminally under-owned this week. And I've been on him all year, and for good reason. I mean, he's just grinded out good finish after good finish after good finish. I mean, yeah, we didn't see the win coming at Phoenix, and it was kind of a luck win. They stayed out, Stenhouse got into Larson, he ran away with it. But hey, a win is a win. But regardless, he's been running so well this year, and he's just going to be so under-owned. And he has the results here to back it up and give me so much Ryan Newman.
What would be – okay, let me ask you this. How much are you going to have of Ryan Newman?
At least 60%. At least. I won't – not at tracks like this. I'm not going 100%. Can't do that. But, if he was under-owned and, starting, back in 39th or 7th, if, one of those guys that didn't qualify was going to be under-owned, then I would just hit the lock button because that makes sense. But that's just not how it's going to work. So, man, I'll give you between 60 and 80%.
Take notes, guys. Whew. I can never do that.
All right, hey.
You got to take.
I'll go down with that ship though.
Yeah. And you've rode it quite a bit this year. It's not sunk yet. So
Nope.
moving on. Should I go Boyd or Blaney? You pick.
Come on, go Blaney. Blaney's your boy.
All right. So for you guys that know me, I love me some Ryan Blaney, and I've hated his performance lately. Last week he had a rocket ship, and damn Greg Galding gets in the way, and Keselowski gives him a shot. He goes into the wall, and what could have been? Who knows? But week after week after week after week, something has went wrong. But today, he flew that baby to a pole position. And to add on top of that, he is really good at this racetrack. And to add on top of that, Penske has been dominant at mile and a halves here lately. So, with that being said, he looks like the strongest Penske car this week. And he looks really good in practice. I think if you watched that last practice, I think Jeff Gordon was talking about Jimmy Johnson, Truex, and him. And they were saying that he wasn't the fastest 10 lap. He wasn't the fastest 15. But when you got past 20, his car seemed to be the one. And I'm pretty sure they showed the same statistic at Texas, and he lined up with all those. So that being said, great car in practice, he's fast on single laps because he won the pole. So they definitely, which they'll go back to race setup after that, but I'm sure they've learned something they can add on later the race. He was loose in practice, but as PJ once noted, the track's going to tighten up at night. And that's one thing that does concern me a little bit is these practices, they're not during night. If that's one thing that could steer you away from him, that's probably the thing but I'm not steering away from him. I'm probably going to have too much of him. And I was telling PJ earlier, this is one of the weeks where I'm scared to death to even play because when I'm sitting here making my lineups, he's probably going to be one of my first ones I pick. I'm like, I'm going to probably look down and he's going to be 80% owned. And I'm probably going to have to go redo most of my lineups. But back to the story, Ryan Blaney's an excellent play. He starts first, and we was talking about earlier, is Logano going to jump him on the restart and take the lead? For me, I think they're going to make a deal where Blaney's going to shoot to the front, and Logano, if he's got the good enough car, will chase him down. That's happened with Keselowski a couple times earlier on this year with Blaney, so I'm assuming they'll do some teamwork with Logano. That being said, I think Blaney's he might have some competition there in the first couple laps with Truex because I think Truex has a better short-run car. So that's the only guy I think you got to worry about at the start of the race. But after that, I think Blaney's set and sell. I think he will lead most of the first segment, and I think he's going to have a top 10 DFS day. So if you don't have him, and he's a cheap dominator. I mean, we talked about that at Texas. If you could get this guy at, he's 8,000. Which for me, I think he should be underpriced because of all of his recent bad luck. But at 8,000, that's still cheap for a guy that's in Penske equipment, and he's flying and he's led laps and probably should have won Texas earlier this year. So for me, lock him in. If anything, this is going to be my guy. That's the Ryan Newman, which I'm sure everyone else is going to have tons of Ryan Blaney. But if you don't have him, thank you for giving me your money. That's all I'm going to say about that. We'll let PJ go with his next guy.
Yeah, so we're gonna go Dale Jr., who is another guy that didn't make it out for qualifying this afternoon. 8,300, starting 33rd. They've had an atrocious start to the year. There's no other way to put it. It couldn't have gone any worse.
Yeah.
That being said, again, in the past, at least in his younger years, Texas is one of the good tracks for him. So Kansas, very similar. Maybe not very similar, but similar enough to Texas. And he's starting 33rd. Again, there's not much negative there. Kind of the same, like I said, with Erik Jones, and they're going to figure it out.
Yeah.
they're too good to figure it out. And he seemed pretty happy, with his stuff in practice. He didn't seem too concerned, with missing qualifying. Obviously, you want to qualify. You want the pit stall selection. You want the track position. But, oh, well, they're going to have to deal with it. They saw a teammate, start dead last at Texas and win the race. So, yeah, he obviously is not really going to have any chance to dominate the race. But as far as place differential, like when you have guys that miss qualifying, they're this good. They're in this good of equipment and they're this cheap. Like, I think Junior is underpriced. Like, I know he's been horrible, but like,
you can't let that dictate.
Yeah, and like 8,300, like that's
yeah.
It's just one of those things. Like they're gonna figure it out, and I think this week is crazy though too, in the fact that like final practice was before qualifying, like during the day. Like they didn't have a final practice as in race conditions, as in like later in the day. There's only 20 cars that even made a 10 lap today because it was so slick out there. So there's just a lot that's going to happen. He's going to be highly owned because he missed qualifying, because he's cheap, because he's junior. But you definitely can't have none. I'll probably go equal. I'm going to try to go equal weight on the field. I don't really want to be overweight. I don't really want to be underweight on him. I just want to kind of match the field because I think my differentiation is going to be Ryan Newman. So
yeah, I mean, yeah, you gotta have him. Like you said, he's underpriced, and you really, like I said before, you really can't let recency bias dictate it because, well, Ryan Blaney's luck looks like it's changed. So, which Junior didn't get out for qualifying. He tweeted out that he was busy beating the LIS system with his baseball bat. So, I mean, hopefully that's the last bad luck. But you really can't let recency bias dictate it. So moving on, I'm going to cover one more guy in this section, then we'll move on to the next. But Clint Boyer, the hometown guy, he's at 8,600, and he starts right behind Jimmy Johnson in 30th. So for me, this is the guy that when you think about it, you'd like him to be a little bit more cheaper, but I keep saying this week after week, but he keeps proving me wrong. He keeps showing up in the top 10. It's like a signal for me to play more of him because I'm not playing enough of him week after week. So I'm not going to make a mistake to not play him at Kansas because he's from Kansas. This is his home track. I think he's got to finish in the top 10. He might be so aggressive that he could get himself in some problems on pit road or something like that, but we're not going to predict that. Yeah, I mean, it's just like the junior thing. He starts so far back. I mean, what more do you need from a hometown guy? It's like Ricky Stenhouse did last week. He made some aggressive moves. He was so aggressive because it was his hometown track, and he wanted to do everything he could to get that win. I think Clint Boyer is going to do everything he can to win this. What better way to win his first race with Stuart Haas than win it here at Kansas? So, for me, he's not my favorite in the people who didn't qualify, but he's certainly not my least favorite. So, Fire him up. Try to go equal with these guys. But if you like one guy more than the other, just make sure do not go without him because you will pay. He's bound to finish in the top 10. I'd be shocked if he didn't come in the top 10.
Right.
That's about all we got. Do you have any closing thoughts on that section before we move on?
Not really. I mean, Boyer was like legitimately disappointed that he didn't get to qualify because he just wants to run so good here. Like he wants it so bad. He's finally in good equipment. So I definitely think like they'll have a chance. Again, it's like junior though. Like, but again, they're not priced where you necessarily need dominant air points. So that is what it is. It's obviously it's the best place differential guys that you can have, and they're quality drivers. So
yeah, you
gotta have them, and it's hard too because like things like this, it's like some people are like, oh, take a stance and over on them or under on them, like all these guys that miss qualifying. I'm trying to go equal to the field, and then everything else is different.
Yeah, that's the way you got to go. So. Moving on. Let's see here. I'm going to start out talking about Martin Truex Jr. So if you guys remember last year, if you don't, I'll refresh your brain. He led this whole race just about. I think it was a pit road penalty. It seems about right because he was the king of bad luck last year. But yeah, he led the whole race. Got screwed over late in the race and didn't win. What more can you say? So, but if you didn't have him, you didn't win any GPPs because he led 176 something. It was up there. I mean, he led the 3/4 of the race. So for me, it's a revenge factor. He should have won here last year. His car is a rocket in practice, and if you remember me saying earlier that him or Johnson had the best 15 laps. So he's got a rocket on short distance. His car falls off sort of. He's not the best long run car, but he's certainly top 3, top 4 car overall. For me, I think this is how I'm doing it. I don't know how you guys will do it or not, but this is how I'm approaching 75% of my GPP on them. So I'm going to go for the 2 dominators, and I'm going to have 4 place differential. So for me, and the 2 guys I'm going to talk about here, one of them is Martin Truex. I think Ron Blaney's going to lead, which I can't say 3. I got to say 3 dominators. Take that back. 3 dominators, 3 place differential because I obviously forgot about Blaney. But Truex, he's got to lead laps here. He's dominant on mile and a halves. I mean, everything points towards Martin Truex leading laps, being dominant, coming in the top 3, and he's probably going to be in one of the winning lineups, I think. Like I said, his car's fast this week. He's been fast at every mile and a half we've went to for the past year. And Cole Pern, once again, I'll hammer it down. He's a top 3 crew chief in the sport. So
yeah.
Toyotas are fast this week. I think he's got the best Toyota, in my opinion. Yeah, so I think he's probably going to be higher owned of the other than Jimmy Johnson out of this Prost group. So don't go so heavy on him, but I think where you can take advantage is if the whole DFS community, if they're looking at this and saying, we're going to take all these guys starting 30th through 40th. If they try to shove all those guys in their lineup, odds are they're probably not going to have Truex or they're not going to have one of these other guys. So that being said, I don't think he's going to be that high owned, which means you probably want to jump all over him. And I think later on, me and PJ are going to talk about how much do you want of those guys in the back. But like we've said, you need to have the majority of your lineups with him. But I think there are some circumstances and there are situations where you need to get more of these guys up here because I think these are the classes of the mile and a half tracks lately. So for me, I think it's an easy decision in Martin Truex. I know the guy you're about to talk about, he's got a hot rod too. So
Yeah, no, absolutely. We'll touch on Jimmy first. 10,100, starting 29th. There's not much more to say. Obviously, missed qualifying. Turned out all right for him last time at Texas. I don't even need to go into results with JJ. It's just the thing with him and why you would feel he would be the one that I feel most confident about that missed qualifying. Obviously, he's just, whatever. He's JJ. It's pretty easy to say, but that has a lot to do with Chad Knaus too. And with not having practice, again, I'm just going to keep harping on this because it is such an underrated thing. Like, not having practice in race conditions is like, that's extremely, extremely difficult. Like, just take it from me who has it. I've raced cars myself during the day and then races are at night and tracks change and it is drastic. And there's nobody that I'd rather have than Jimmy Johnson and Chad Knaus. So if there's anybody that's going to figure it out, it's going to be those two. And I mean, you could say that almost every week, but just those two together I trust them like Obviously, so much.
Let's talk about him for a couple more minutes here because I want to get your thoughts on something. He's 10,100. What ownership percentage do you think he's going to be? Because when I was looking and I was making lineups, when I fit him into my lineup with another one of these guys, it sort of limits what you can do in that mid-range 8,800 to 7,500.
Right.
And your other guy that you're about to talk about is he's almost 1,000 cheaper. So should we be off of Jimmy Johnson more than I think we should, like we're going to be? Because he's so expensive. But that goes back to your point. Chad Canals, race conditions. You got to assume they're going to finish in the top 10. But for his price, do you need laps led to really pay off? Or are we –
I mean, well, see, I think like this week is a lot different. Like I know that a lot of people that talk about NASCAR DFS as a whole will definitely tell you that you need laps led at 10,100. But this week is different because you have the opportunity to get a cheap dominator. So I don't think like he would have to. For me, it would have to be like in a lineup where it would be 5 like place differentials and then Blaney. Like you would have to just do something like that, and then you hope obviously Blaney leads the majority of the race, and then you take all place differential because he is expensive. So you know you're not going to fit him, say Blaney, and then Truex, like because you're not myself. I'm not going below 6,000 this week.
That's the problem. That's the problem I'm having with mine. I think I made it work, but I'm using Danica. I think I'm using Danica and Allmendinger in a lineup, and that goes back to me saying I'm not that confident on Allmendinger, but it's just so hard because I want to play Johnson, and then I want to play another couple of guys. I mean, but I don't want to go down to Landon Castle because who knows what's going to happen with him. So I mean,
I think in 1 or 2 lineups it's okay. It's okay to do that if you want to take some shots, but I'll literally, out of my 50 lineups, I will have like 1 or 2 Landon Castle and like maybe 1 or 2 David Reagan, and that is it. Like I don't feel good about it at all, at all. So it's just going to be a different roster construction. And if you're targeting 2 or 3 dominators, I don't think you can play Jimmy Johnson.
Yeah, and that's what I'm struggling with because I want to play that, and I don't know. I think, like you said, it's just going to depend on how you construct your lineups, and once again, differentiate yourself. I think that's going to be how you pick dominators is how you're going to do that. So, let's move on here to my other guy, Kevin Harvick. He's a little bit more expensive than Jimmy Johnson at 10,400. My other guy, Martin Truex, was 9,700, and this is another problem I'm running into. Excuse me, but Jimmy Johnson and Kevin Harvick is what I keep trying to put in here. I'm trying to get equal exposure to Truex and Harvick because I think those are the 2 guys, other than Blaney, have the best chance of leading laps. I'm having so many problems. I can't decide if I like Harvick or Truex better. Obviously like both, and I want to go overweight on one of those guys. I just can't decide which one I want to. Kevin Harvick should have qualified inside the top 5. I think he starts 8th. I think DW said he overran a corner or didn't get into a corner right in qualifying in that last round. So who knows? He should be in the top 4 maybe. But starting 8th, this guy he's one of these guys that have dominated mile and a halves. I'll say it again over and over and over, and I'll say it again. He's right up there in the last since 2015 at this track. The past 4 races here, he's been one of them guys that has dominated. So for me, if you're going away from Jimmy Johnson, you got to go Harvick or Truex for me. That 10,400 is so expensive, but you got to think he's going to lead laps. That's what I'm saying. I think he's going to lead laps. I think he's going to lead a third of the race. So for me, I'm comfortable with it. I'm not going to be able to fit him and Jimmy in a lineup and feel comfortable about the last two drivers I'll select. But you got to take chances, again, as PJ said. So what the heck? I'm gonna do the best I can. I'll fiddle around with it. Hopefully I'll get something I like. If not, then who knows? I'll throw another dart at the board and start over. That's it. That's all I got for Kevin Harvick. I mean, just Rodney Childers, track history. He's fast in practice. He's great at mile and a halves. Really not much more to add to that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And before we get on to the next one, maybe we'll give away a lineup here, but I was just messing around with it, and I got you a Johnson, Harvick, Blaney lineup with Erik Jones, Ryan Newman, and Allmendinger.
Ryan Newman, okay, maybe.
Ryan Newman could be the key.
Because I wasn't picking him at any of my lineups. Like I don't know. I was on Ryan Newman the week he won. That's the weird thing. But ever since then, I've not been comfortable picking him. I don't know. Who knows? But that's a good lineup right there. So if anyone wants to throw that in a GPP, and
that'll be one of my lineups. So we'll be sharing it. But that's fine if it wins. So I mean, the last guy that I'll talk about is Kyle Busch. 9,400 for Kyle Busch, which is ridiculous. Starting fifth, one of the best. Again, it's just something that, like, you don't even have to go into detail. But, like, when I opened DraftKings and then clicked the NASCAR tab and went in this week and I saw 9,400, I, like, almost fell out of my chair. Like, how in the world is he 9,400 at a place like this?
And he's first in driver rating here for one, and he should be the guy that's in 10,000, if anybody. So
I have no idea what they were doing. Like, even before I saw any practice, any qualifying, it's like, all right, how much is too much? Because this price is crazy low, and like, he has as good a shot, if not the best shot, at dominating this race, I think. Like,
he's up there.
And you don't want to use the term, again, you definitely don't want to use the term he's due, as a good reason to play him, but they've put together crap this year. Like, they need something. Like you had touched on before, like, Toyotas are fast. And again, he is one that adapts to a track like no other. And I know they're totally different cars, totally different beasts, but he ran the truck race tonight.
Did he win that? I think we started right at the end of it.
Yeah, we started at the end of it, so I didn't quite see that. But I know he won. I think he won stage 2, and I get it. Like, they're all inferior drivers to him, and I fully get that. But he's at least going to have a little bit of knowledge on how the track is changing this weekend. Like, yeah, I know you can go back to last year and get that, but it matters what it's doing this weekend, like now. And he's going to have that feel before anybody else does. So he's so good. Like, I can't stand him, like, as a person and out of the car, but he is so good. And to get him at this price is just like.
And that goes back, if you can get a cheap Dominator, you can fit more of that price range that we keep going back to. So
yeah. I mean, if you go him and Blaney, and then you can get whatever you want in the mid-range, and you can differentiate all kinds of stuff. So, like, you better believe a good chunk of my lineups that's how they're going to be constructed.
Yeah, and to go back to we keep saying he's due, because I know I've been on him a couple of weeks. I think the whole industry's been on him. I mean, but again, if we are overrating practice, which we normally do, that's just what the DFS industry has done this year. He's one of these guys, he has a fast 10, 15-lap car. I don't think he's got the best long-run car, but as you said, it's a not race. They practice during the day. And, he's got a great crew chief. He's a great racer. And if anyone can race a loose car, which it will tighten up, but like, I'll go back and say it again. I think Kyle Busch straight driver, taking everything out of it. If you give everyone an equal car, I think he will come top 2, top 3. He's just that
All
good a
right.
driver.
All right. I thought you were going to say win, and we were going to have an issue.
No, I don't. He's up there for me. He can
Oh,
drive.
for sure.
Yeah,
For sure.
and it
I
goes
hope
back.
people – do you think people are going to be off of him?
For me, I'm on the fence. You can't fade him. I'm not going to make a mistake.
But are people going to realize this price? Like I'm honestly asking because like starting 5th, he's kind of in a no man's land where you can't really get to him unless you want to get to him because you're going to play JJ over him, right? The general public is.
I think people are going to be Truex over him. I know
That
I
too.
am, and I think people might pick Harvick over him. I'm not sure about that one yet, but this could be the week. And I'll say it again. I know I've said it all throughout the year that we've been doing this. He will screw me when no one is on him. He's like Brad Keselowski last week. No one was on Brad Keselowski, or it was a week before. I forget which one it is. It was 2 weeks ago. My bad. But no one was on Brad Keselowski. What did he do? He dominated the majority of the race. That's what Kyle Busch is capable of doing. He did it so many times last year. But we've picked him, like we've said, he's the best. He's the best pick of the whole slate. So, and he's screwed us over this year. So, for me, I can see him going under-owned just because so many people have picked him and he's not produced. He's not led the laps that he should have or he's predicted. So, that's a good point. For me, I like Harvick and Truex better. But then again, when you look at driver rating, Kyle Busch, I think, is number 1 at this track in the last 4 races. So,
and here's the thing too, like about DFS that I'm a huge fan of. Like you almost treat him, as stock market, and you're going to buy low. So if we're buying low on him and he's under owned, like
what's not to like about him? I mean, I wouldn't, I definitely wouldn't have him as a top 3, top 4 ownership guy. For me, I think you may do that just because you may want to be overweight on him.
Yeah.
I'm not comfortable with picking him. I know he's had all the success late at this kind of track. And I thought Jimmy Johnson was going to be the guy that we needed to talk about, but it's turned out Kyle Busch is he's the code you need to crack. So,
well, just the more I think about it, like I literally think that there is a legitimate chance that he's,
I think he will,
like Newman, grossly underowned.
I think he will. The more I think about it, I think he will. Who knows? I might be 10 feet under again if Kyle Busch.
No, not this week.
Oh no. But that'll do it for our salary breakdowns. We'll move on to the most DK points and our winner. I haven't really thought much about the winner. So I'll let PJ go first with the most DK points scored. This one's tough because you could think the 30 through 40 is probably going to be it unless some guy dominates.
Right. I mean, no, I can't. I can't take Erik Jones. I'm going to go Jimmy Johnson.
Any reason other than he's awesome?
I mean, again, with him and Knaus, it's if he does get up there early on. So this is banking on that he can get up to the front quicker than I guess would be reasonable. This is with him leading some laps.
Do you think he's going to lead laps? That's a good question to ask.
I do. Yeah.
When do you think do you think it's mid-race, late race?
That's the thing. If he gets up there mid-race, no doubt he's the highest scorer, right? I mean, from where he's starting, there's no doubt. if he's like a Logano at Richmond and leads the last 25 laps, yeah, no, he's not going to be. But that was also Logano being scored where he started, not where he actually started the race. So, yeah, I'll go Jimmy Johnson.
Let's see. I'm going to go Martin Truex. I think as much as I want to say Blaney's going to lead and win, I'm just not feeling it this week. I'm very excited for him to be on the pole, don't get me wrong, but the way that Truex dominated last year, like you said with Canals, he's got Cole Pern, which is a top 3 crew chief in my mind. Just the way that Truex has ran lately, Toyotas are fast, the way he dominates on these mono-halves lately, I'm going to say Truex gets his revenge. I'm going to say he gets out front in the second segment, and Kevin Harvick may steal some laps led, but I think Truex, he's probably going to lead the majority of the race again, and I think he does. I'm just going to go ahead and pick him as my race winner. I think he's going to lead the majority of the laps, and I think he's going to win the race. So who do you have winning the race?
Yeah, winning the race, it's going to be the Kyle Busch week. I really think it is. Like, we're so far into the season now, and they have just any mistake possible, like, they just keep making it, whether it's getting in traffic. I mean, even at Martinsville when Stenhouse moved them out of the way, and he didn't really have control of that. But again, it's just any bad situation like they can possibly find themselves in, he has found it. So I do think, again, and I know they're different cars, and I fully get that, but I think tonight he's going to be able to take something over there and make the adjustments quicker than others may be able to. So I do like Kyle Busch. Again, you make great points with Martin Truex too, because you feel like it's going to be one of those two. Maybe Harvick, but I feel better about a Truex or a Busch just fully dominating this race. So that that's maybe the decision that you're going to have to make. Definitely have a little bit of both, or a lot of one and a little bit of one, but regardless, just mix up your exposures to those two because I think they have a great chance along with your Blaney. Because that's, if he, like you said, at that price, and as long as he doesn't lead 100 laps and then wrecks out of the race, like, knock on wood, but you'll be fine. Regardless of where he finishes, as long as it's not like a 35th or something. And again, knock on wood, but you can't predict that kind of stuff. And if you're going to say he's going to lead 100 laps at 8,000, yeah, you're going to have him in. So
I think to go to Blaney, I think we'll close the show with this. For me, it's so hard to speak with my head when I talk about him, because if you follow me on Twitter, I'm guilty of it. Like I said last, and I think it was in the middle of the race, I was like, this is his day. 15 minutes later, he goes in the wall, finishes almost dead last. So I do think he's going to have a top 10 day. I think he will come the top 5. I think the problem is he's just not put a full race together, and that's what disappoints me as a fan. But as a DFS guy, you got to look at his full body of work, and you have to be able to realize he's in his second year, and him and Chase and Kyle Larson and Erik Jones, they've made mistakes over and over and over that's cost him a couple races, which I think what cost him the Texas race was his crew chief wanted the stage win. While the rest, I don't think Jimmy Johnson did. I think he actually pitted with Ryan Blaney. I think Ryan Blaney just had some problems getting restart on that. But back to him for tomorrow. I think he leads most of the first segment, and then again, I just think it's going to be one of these other guys that we talk about that's probably going to take it home. I'd love to see it happen. If it does happen, I will go ecstatic. But he can't put a full race together. It's like Kyle Busch. It's like Dale Jr. It's like all these other guys. They're having bad luck. They've had problems. and he's due. I mean, he's due for a good finish. So I think he's going to be highly owned. So if he does have problems, you're probably not going to be so bad if he does wreck or has some bad luck. So,
Right.
Is there any closing thoughts before we wrap this up for you?
I would just say that this is going to be like, we don't have enough data to like fully like really get a good grip on like what's going to happen this week. So don't be afraid to be different this week. Like, you can even pay up to be contrarian with Brad Keselowski, who's starting 17th. He's the most expensive driver. Many people are not going to click on him this week. So don't be afraid, to kind of make those type of plays. Like, the ownership game is going to win this week.
No doubt about it. All right, guys, that will do it for us. Again, make sure you subscribe to the channel. We continue to grow, which we're very pleased. We continue to. Last week we had a couple guys say they used our advice and they won quite a bit of money. So we're very happy that. Make sure if you do have some success, shout us out or something. Let us know that you did well. Subscribe to the channel, like this video, leave us comments, ask us questions. We'll answer them. If I don't, he will. Same thing every week. So give us a follow on Twitter if you got any more questions. That being said, good luck to you guys. Hopefully one of you guys takes home all the cash. Hopefully we do. So that being said, good luck, and we will see you next week.
Good luck, guys.